Welcome to the Social Impact Journal. This is episode 19. My name is Jack and I'm your host. In March of 2023, Cyclone Freddy first hit Mozambique. It went on to be the longest tropical cyclone on record. Today, I'm talking with Chimwemwe Sakunda Ndhlovu, the Caritas Malawi National Co-Ordinator, about their response to Cyclone Freddy in Malawi. If you enjoy the episode, please do share it with your friends or colleagues and make sure to hit the follow button on our social media channels. Here is the trailer.
The Catholic Development Commission, and in short we call it as CADECOM. We have a report by Malawi government, which we call Malawi Vulnerability Assessment Report, which just came out some last month. It's also indicating that about 3 million Malawians are living in acute hunger, also because of the Cyclone Freddy, because most of the crops were also damaged that time. For us to put up any emergency appeal, we had to wait for government to declare disasters. So that was done, I think, after 2 days or so, when the disaster struck. So we quickly put up an emergency appeal to our Caritas Confederation. As I speak today, we managed to get about 90% of the funding levels, about 615,000 euros. Climate change is real, and as in Malawi, as we speak right now, we are experiencing it. And unfortunately, most of the people who are suffering the most are the most vulnerable and the poor.
Good morning, Chimwemwe. How are you?
I'm good. And how are you, Jack?
Yes, very good, thank you. Very good. Tuning in here from Kampala, Uganda. I understand you're in Lilongwe, Malawi right now.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing. So before we get into the topic of the podcast, which is around how your work with CADECOM and Caritas Malawi, the emergency response to Cyclone Freddy during 2023, I'd like to understand a bit more about your journey and how your career in the international development space started.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. My career started a long time ago, I think during my school days. Actually, my first degree is in environmental sciences and natural resource management. Before I did my master's in development studies, which also is part of the development discourse anyway, and environmental impacts and climate change. And I also did public health, particularly looking at the health systems, which also looked at issues to do with how the climate change is affecting the health sector and other things. So I started a long time ago to have this desire to work in the development discourse. And then I also joined a civil society organization soon after my studies, where I've been engaged in climate change advocacy issues as well as environmental related activities. So basically, that's my brief in terms of my journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now you're with CADECOM / Caritas Malawi. So for those that don't know, what is Caritas and the international network?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. Actually, I'm the current National Co-Ordinator for Caritas Malawi, which is also locally known as the Catholic Development Commission. And in short, we call it as CADECOM. So CADECOM is a development arm and relief arm of the church, which is the Catholic Church in Malawi. And our role is basically to support the church in terms of the social Catholic teachings, particularly looking at the human integral development. So CADECOM comes in to facilitate that, and in my position particularly, I'm there to coordinate and oversee the activities that we undertake under CADECOM. CADECOM is also, Caritas Malawi is also part of the global confederation on Caritas. We have our headquarters in Italy, that is Vatican, Caritas Internationalis, and then we also have offices in regions, like in Africa, we have the Africa Caritas office, which also coordinates all the work of the Caritases in Africa. So particularly that's how we work. But suffice to say that despite that it's a church organization, we don't discriminate in our work. we work with everyone, and our criteria is actually strictly based on the level of vulnerabilities. So we don't look at the region or don't look at any other criteria, and work with everybody, despite that it's a Catholic Church organization. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know Malawi is a country that is highly vulnerable to extreme weather events. So as an NGO working with the Catholic Church and responding to emergencies, how do you prepare for such an event, such an extreme weather event?
Yes, thank you so much, Jake. I think as a church, we are almost all the time the first point of entry whenever the disasters occur, because we live in the communities and we are there in all the time. So whenever the disaster occurs, we are one of the first entry points for the communities. But also just to say that in terms of preparedness, it's still an area which we are still grappling with, particularly because of lack of resources. In as much as a church organization, we have permanent structures on the ground, which also works hand in hand with the community-based government structures. And these structures are all trained such that whenever disasters occur, they are there to support using whatever resources they do have, before Caritas as an organization putting up a team to go and assess in these areas. So that's basically what we do. But in terms of now the response, we heavily rely on donors, donor partners, and other support from any well-wishers to support us. But the only limitation factor is that this only starts when there's a declaration by government of Malawi that there's a disaster. And in most of the times, it comes a bit late, where already people have already begun experiencing impacts in terms of due to the disasters. So that's the only drawback. But in terms of like Cyclone Freddy and the other cyclones we have had in Malawi, realizing the challenges that we are facing, as CADECOM, as Caritas Malawi, we have developed a preparedness plan, emergency preparedness plan, through which we have outlined how we could mobilize resources quickly so that we are able to respond to disasters on time. And we got support from Trocare. That was just last year. So that plan, we are still looking for resources actually to fund the plan itself. But within it, we are also suggesting maybe that we should have kind of fixed assets. You know, when there are disasters, there's need maybe for shelter, quick shelter. There's need for rescue, search and rescue, because many people are trapped during this disaster. So we have also outlined a number of issues that we may require for us to be able to respond to the disasters quickly. Just to highlight some of the issues that we are looking at in this case is maybe if we can have like a pre-positioned funding, which you can use soon the disasters occur to procure maybe the immediate needs that the communities are looking for. And indeed, like last year when we had the Cyclone Anna and Cyclone Freddy, even this time around, we had a small fund which Trocare gave us. And this we enabled us at least to reach out to some of the affected households quickly with some relief items. But it was small amounts. It's small amounts which you cannot manage to reach out to many. And the other thing we're also looking at, maybe if we can have rafters, boat rafters, which we can use when doing search and rescue exercises during the disasters. In Malawi, we only rely on Malawi Defense Force for that, because they are the only organization that has some boats, but not many, of course. And yet, we do have, as Caritas Malawi, we do have trained personnel in rescue and search and rescue, for instance, but we are unable to respond. Rather, we wait for other partners to support us with such kind of assets. We are also looking at issues like tents. We do have some tents now, but not as many. which we usually use whenever we have these disasters, because many people, like Fred, they had their houses completely destroyed and they needed immediate support in terms of shelter. So we managed with our few tents which we had to also support government in terms of providing temporary shelter for the affected households. But we are looking for more in this preparedness plan, which is preparedness plan which we are working on, which we have now, and we are actually looking for funds to fund it. And again, we also had areas like the experience with Cyclone Freddy. We had areas which were inaccessible. We couldn't go there, and nobody would go there because they were flooded and some rivers are busted and nobody would have easy access. So here we are also looking at how do we collect data in that sense, and we are looking at support in terms of drones, for instance. Some few organizations like Red Cross, I think they did provide that, but it's not enough as well to reach out to many areas. So we are also planning to have such kind of assets which we can also use to collect data in times of disasters, so that we can enable us to plan and maybe support the affected households accordingly. Other than that, we are also looking at issues like vehicles. These are heavy-duty vehicles, because we had experiences like with Cyclone Freddy where we couldn't even manage to go and deliver some relief items because of lack of heavy-duty vehicles. So in this plan is actually highlighted there, and we are looking forward that maybe if we have resources, we can put up resources and have these things handy so that whenever we have disasters, we can ably respond. Maybe just also to say that with Trocare funds, at least, because you may be aware that even in our churches, they were also used as camps. We had people coming, living there, and we had to respond very quickly in terms of support. And we used these funds we got from Trocare. It was about 10,000 euro, which is not enough, but at least we managed to do something just to support the households which were sheltered in our parishes and other camps. So that's what we are looking at in terms of way forward on how best we can be responding. But it's an area which we are really grappling with. We are still grappling with it, mainly because of lack of resources. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chimwemwe. And you've touched on a few areas that I'd like to cover in more detail a little bit later. But just to get started, Cyclone Freddy. So this started in February of 2023. So maybe you can just talk to me a little bit about the impact and the effects of Cyclone Freddy in terms of numbers.
Yeah, in terms of numbers, Cyclone Freddy really affected a lot of households. I think we are talking over about 400,000 households. I don't just have the exact figure at the moment, but we are talking over that, and many people also died. More than 1,500 people died, and we had a lot of injuries, more than 2,500 injuries, and some people were still missing. I should say are still missing up to date. I think there were about 500 people who are still missing up to date. So in terms of the impact, when we translate the households, it's actually reaching to more than 1 million plus. I mean, if we translate to individuals, we see about 1 million plus people who are affected. And this we are talking in about almost in all the sectors, like agriculture, for instance. We had the fields, because cyclone also happened at the time when actually people were cultivating. We are almost about to harvest in some areas. So we are talking about fields being washed away with all the crops that were there, and people lost a lot of food items, even those that were kept in their houses, because we had also many houses which were also damaged in the process, completely damaged in this case in the process. And we had a lot of water points because in Malawi most people rely on boreholes and wells. So we had a lot, almost all the water points were also contaminated in a way, and some of them completely damaged. So that also caused a lot of problems in terms of access to potable water. And again, maybe you may also be aware that this time was the time where we had cholera. We are just recovering from cholera pandemic. And this was putting at risk the communities to waterborne diseases such as cholera, because they had no potable water. And we also had cases of gender-based violence, where we saw a lot of families separating. We have information that is verified that many families, like men, left their families going to look for greener pastures elsewhere, and they ended up maybe marrying other women there and leaving the children and the women without support or with minimal support. So we had such cases, and we also had school infrastructure that was also damaged. Some schools were closed, and I think if you may recall that even the government at some point had declared all schools in the southern region closed for about a month or two, somewhere there. And this also affected the education sector in a way, because students by then were not going to school. And we also had a lot of losses in terms of properties, in terms of livestock, and other losses, which has also put most of the communities in shock. Actually, they are still in shock. Most of them, they are still traumatized because of such losses. And we are here as Caritas Malawi in some areas we are managing at least to reach them with the psychosocial support, because we also realize that this is again another area which most of the time is forgotten in humanitarian relief. So we have also engaged, we are a church organization, we have also engaged the church, our friends from the Pastoral Commission, to also reach out to communities in terms of providing that hope to the community, to the affected communities, so that they can still recover and live normally, and also see what they can do in terms of supporting their livelihood. So we are also doing that, and we have also seen a lot of impact in terms of food security and nutrition. I think we have a report by Malawi government, which we call Malawi Vulnerability Assessment Report, which just came out, I think some last month. It's also indicating that about 3 million Malawians are living in acute hunger, also because of the Cyclone Freddy, because most of the crops were also damaged that time. And indeed, as we speak right now, Malawi relies on maize as a staple food, and the prices has really gone up more than maybe it used to be 10,000 Malawi kwacha, around that. Now it's pay 50 kg bag. Now it's about 50,000 Malawi kwacha, which many Malawians cannot afford to buy, and this really is affecting them in terms of access to food. So in a nutshell, I think that's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many different layers of the impact. So, I mean, maybe to give me an idea of timelines. So, when at Caritas Malawi, when did you know just how severe and powerful this cyclone was going to be? Talk me through those first steps. So, once you started seeing the data coming through, how did you mobilize the different parishes and churches to come up with the plan? I know you mentioned that you had some funding from Trocaire with the emergency preparedness plan, but just talk me through those timelines of communication.
Thank you so much, Jack. In terms of being aware about the cyclone, I think as Malawi, we should say here that the government is really trying their best in terms of weather production of the weekly weather updates. So they had predicted about the Cyclone Freddy, and this information was also communicated to many stakeholders, including Caritas Malawi, way before the cyclone. But the way it was communicated and how it happened, that was not the same. I think we were overwhelmed because we thought maybe it won't be as severe as we experienced Cyclone Freddy. So we knew about it, and before it occurred, and being a church organization, also quickly reached out to our structures, including our parishes across Malawi, sensitizing people so that they should be aware of the probable disaster that was coming, and also take precautionary measures so that we shouldn't have a lot of impacts. So we did that, and soon after it occurred again, because we have structures on the ground, they also informed us. They kept on updating us on what is happening. And quickly, as the Caritas Malawi, we mobilized our team, because we have teams across Malawi in all the dioceses, which also looks into disaster issues, climate change issues. So we quickly mobilized our team also to go and do the assessments. And that's where we had come to know that maybe our parishes, some of them were also flooded with people seeking for shelter, and they were actually used as camps. So they did that, and we got the information as soon as the disaster occurred. And throughout, as the things were happening, they were still updating us. That is through our structures. But we also work with government structures, which we also are part and parcel, because we are also members of so many clusters in various districts. And through this, again, we're also able to get information in terms of the impacts of the Cyclone Freddy. But just to say that how it was predicted and how it occurred, it was quite overwhelming, because nobody thought maybe that would be the case, because it was more of, yes, there will be flooding, some rivers will have more water and so forth, but not that we may have like mudsliding, because we had a lot of them, mudslides from the mountains, which also killed a lot of people. That was never predicted. So it was kind of a surprise, but we still had to move in quickly because of the support we have and the way we work also with government structures and other stakeholders. Yeah.
So Chimwemwe, apart from the funds that you mentioned earlier, did you raise additional funds from the Caritas International members? And talk me through that process. How do you put together the budget and the plan so quickly to be able to raise the funds, of course, receive the money, and then be able to deploy it in communities as part of a response approach?
Yes, thank you so much, Jack. As I said, for us to put up any emergency appeal, we have to wait for government to declare disasters. So that was done, I think, after 2 days or so, when the disaster struck. So we quickly put up an emergency appeal to our Caritas Confederation, which is Caritas Internationalis, which also oversees all the Caritases globally. So through that, we managed to reach out to many, and I should also say here that we're very grateful in terms of the support we got quickly, and that was very quickly for some partners, because they came in very quickly to say that they are going to support us. So we did that when we had submitted the emergency appeal to CI. Then we quickly mobilized ourselves in terms of the team on the ground to still continue doing the assessment. And because by then we also had some small support coming from well-wishers within Malawi locally here, and the church in Malawi as well, who mostly would give us some in-kind support. So we are still distributing that as we were waiting for the response from CI. And suffice to say that they did not take long, as I said, that many partners really came in. So we had put up an appeal of about 686,000 euro. That was in early March. That was in February. And then we got...
How much did you say? You said
686,000 euro.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the size of the appeal which we launched through CI. It's about that figure, and we managed to get, as I speak today, we managed to get about 90% of the funding levels, about 615,000 euro. We are only remaining with about 71,000 euro for us to reach the 100%. But with that support, we managed to reach out to many households with support in terms of food and food items, even in terms of rehabilitating water points, supporting in terms of protection of women and other vulnerable groups within the camps and outside the camps, and other issues, other activities within government. So we managed to reach to about 8,500 households with the various items, relief items, with that support from CI.
Excellent. And I know that you've done a lot of a lot of evaluations and studies on the impacts of the cyclones. So you mentioned around drones earlier as something that could be used in the future. But what methods of evaluation has the team been using in the field?
Yeah, of course, during the evaluation, as I said, we still don't have like the drones which we can use to collect data in areas where we are still not accessible. But we still manage through our structures. We develop a tool through our M&E department. We develop a tool which we use our structures on the ground to collect information on how the disaster impacted on them and how our support has reached to various communities. So we did that and we managed to get information. And just a highlight of some of the key points that we are coming out from the evaluation. I think almost 99% of the people we reached during this exercise, they said they still their need, as I already reported earlier, in terms of food, particularly food items, because many people still don't have food as we speak, because what we are given, we are just for them to use for a particular period of time. But at least they still acknowledge that they were still supported through the support we gave them. And some also said that they still need support in terms of winter cropping. In Malawi, we only have one rainy season annually, and soon after the rainy season, most people would go for winter cropping, where they would also plant some crops, which they also help them in terms of food and also cash when they sell. So they also say that most of them, they still need support to that because they had lost everything. They have no food at the moment. So the only hope is to do the winter cropping. In as much as it's still challenging because most of the land, because winter cropping, we do it in dumbo lands. And during the cyclone, most of the land, the dumbo land, were also covered in sand. And most of them are were rendered unproductive in a way because all the soils were washed away and now they are all sand all over. So we are still having problems, though they still are saying some are still working on the field, removing the sand so that they can still plant the winter cropping cultivation. So they are also saying that maybe if we can support them in areas of winter cropping, for them at least to have food for now as they are waiting for the next rainy season. We also found out that, of course, it's a best practice because they are saying with the early warning systems which are in place at the moment in some areas, of course, not in many areas, at least they managed to make not many people many people had to run away or maybe at least to do something for them not to be heavily affected during the cyclone. So they acknowledge that is really good. And if it's a practice which we can still take on in terms of early warning systems, so that whenever there are disasters, people have to be told and at least have to go and seek shelter somewhere. So they are also acknowledging that, and they really need that support because it's not in many areas where we do have these systems in place. So during the evaluation, we also noted that gap that we also may need to continue supporting the communities. Yeah,
absolutely. So what about Caritas Malawi's long-term strategy on climate adaptation? Do you have particular key focus areas on climate resilience and climate adaptation as part of a longer term strategy and recovery for the communities affected?
Yes. Caritas Malawi, actually, we do have the disaster reduction management policy, through which we are looking at long-term measures which we can contribute because we are just one among other one of the stakeholders in this area. We can contribute towards reduction in terms of negative climate change impacts. So in this strategy, we are looking at restoration, for instance, where we are encouraging communities to restore the environment through, among other things, like afforestation. We do have programs on that. But we are also looking at smart agriculture, where communities have to to cultivate in a smart way, not to destroy the environment. We are also looking at the issues of soil fertility, because in Malawi, most of the soils are degraded in a way. So we are trying also to work around on how we can replenish the soil health in this case. So by use of manure, for example, organic manure, for example, which we are also encouraging communities to do. And also to avoid, because in Malawi, most people use charcoal and firewood for energy, which is also contributing to a lot of deforestation, which we are experiencing at the moment. So we are working with the communities in this case to have alternative sources of energy. For instance, we have the Mbaula. Mbaula is like a fireplace which they can use with the lesser fuel wood for them to cook. In a way, they are also preventing the environmental degradation in terms of deforestation, and the use of other energy sources like solar energy. We also encourage them to use briquettes, fire briquettes. We have projects in some dioceses that are running currently on that, where communities are producing fire briquettes to use for cooking, as well as also cashing in, because they also sell at the end of the day. So we are looking at those things. And again, maybe also like in terms of empowering communities, particularly the youth, in vocational skills training, so that they should have an alternative source of income, rather than maybe indulging in some activities that may not be good to the environment altogether. So we are all doing that. And again, maybe just to mention that as a Catholic Church, we are also following the Pope's encyclical on Laudato Si, which looks at how we can restore the environment and maybe listen more to the cry of our Mother Earth. So we are also using that as a tool to reach out to the communities, particularly the Catholic faithfuls through our various parishes in this case, so that we can use this tool to also like conserve the environment. So partly that's what we are doing, just to try to, in a long term, to try to restore the environment. And again, in terms of the DRR policy, we're also encouraging communities to not settle in disaster-prone areas, because in Malawi we have areas where year in, year out, they experience disasters. So we are also trying to encourage them not to settle in those areas, rather to find other places, uplands, where they can settle, just to avoid some occurrences that may be experienced when the disasters occur. So we are all doing that as Caritas Malawi. But again, at global level and regional level, we are part and parcel of the advocacy work in terms of other climate issues, climate change issues, like advocating for financing for climate adaptation and mitigation, financing for loss and damage, for instance, because Malawi, as we stand, we cannot talk about adaptation before we talk about how do we recover first. So we are also, like at a global level and regional level, we're also part and parcel of that, such kind of advocacy work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chimwemwe. I know that you've released a lot of updates, and there's a documentary also about CADECOM's response to Cyclone Freddy. So we'll make sure for anyone that wants to find out more about the work, they'll be included in the show notes with the relevant links. Now, one question I have for all of my guests is that if you had your own social impact journal, and you had a page that you could write in this with one lesson or piece of experience for a fellow professional in the international development space who needs to respond to a rapidly emerging situation or a natural disaster, what advice would you draw from to give to them?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. And the first thing is for me, as one of the lessons, is climate change is real. And as in Malawi, as we speak right now, we're experiencing it. And unfortunately, most of the people who are suffering the most are the most vulnerable and the poor. So for me, I think it's to say that I think it's high time that we start listening to the cry of the earth and act fast, because many are the times we just talk and don't act. So this is the time we need to act fast so that we help the vulnerable who are actually suffering from this impact of climate change issues. So my appeal is for support, for any kind of support they can give to support the vulnerable people who are suffering at the moment. Like in Malawi, as I said, many people are still poor, are still hungry, are going to bed without food because they don't have food resulting from the disasters that damaged most of their properties, most of their crops and food. So my appeal is for them to join us and support this cause so that we can reach out to many people who are suffering as we speak.
Chimwemwe, thank you so much for your time talking about how CADECOM and Caritas Malawi have responded to these disasters and are planning for the future around climate change, adaptation and mitigation. Thanks for the time, and I'm sure this has been a valuable lesson for those that are listening. So have a wonderful day, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much, and may God bless you.